Okay, so I'm going to show you how to factor using a method called the difference of two squares. Now, this method doesn't work all the time. It only works when, first of all, you have two terms and they're both perfect squares. So let's look at this example. Now, if I want to know if I can do it using the difference of two squares, I have to look at my terms. I have x squared and I have 16. Now, if I take the square root of x squared, I get x. So that's good because it's a perfect square. And if I take the square root of 16, I get 4. So now I know I can use the method called difference of two squares. And another thing is that there has to be a minus sign in the middle, or else we can't use this method. So now that I know I have two perfect squares and they're being subtracted from each other, I'm going to use this method. And basically, this method always looks like this. I'm going to have two parentheses, and I'm going to have 4 terms. So in the first spot, I'm always going to have my x's, and in the second spot, I'm going to have my 4's. And then all you have to do is add a plus sign here and a minus sign here. And now that we have our answer, we can double check if x plus 4 times x minus 4 gives us x squared minus 16 by foiling. So if we foil, we're going to do x times x squared. So that's our first. Outer is negative 4x, inner is positive 4x, and last is negative 16. Minus 4x plus 4x, these cancel out, and we're left with x squared minus 16, so we know we did it correctly. Okay, let's try a harder problem, slightly harder problem. Let's try z6 minus 64. Again, let's list our terms. We have z6 and 64, and we might be able to use the difference of two squares because there is a minus sign and we do have two terms. So let's just check if they are perfect squares. Let's look at the 64 first because it's a little bit easier. Square root of 64 is 8 because 8 times 8 equals 64. Now z6 is a little bit harder to do, but with a little bit of work you can find out that it's z cubed. If you really want to see it, we can figure this out by doing this. z6 equals square root of z times z times z times z times z, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, times z. Okay, now let's regroup them. This is the same thing as this. Times square root of z times z. And square root of z squared is z. Square root of z squared is z. Square root of z squared is z, which gives us z cubed. So the square root of z to the 6 is z cubed because z cubed times z cubed is z to the 6. Okay, so now that we have our two terms and they're perfect squares, then we can use our method. So we have our double parentheses. We have z cubed in the first spots. We have 8 in the second spots. And we have plus and minus. And again, we can also check this answer. Let's check it using FOIL. We have z cubed times z cubed, which is z to the 6. That's first. Outer is negative 8 z cubed. Inner is positive 8 z cubed. And last is 8 times negative 8, which is minus 64. Our middle terms cancel out, and we're left with z6 minus 64. Okay, let's do one last one, slightly harder one, just to make sure we get enough practice with all of these. Let's do negative 9. Negative 9 plus z to the 4th. Okay, so it's not really that apparent in the beginning that we can use the difference of two squares because we have a plus sign. But let's change the order for a second. So let's put z 4th first, and let's do plus negative 9, simple arithmetic, we know that this is the same thing as z fourth to the 9. Z fourth minus 9. So now we can actually use the difference of two squares. Let's take the square root of z to the fourth, and let's take the square root of 9. We know that the square root of 9 is equal to 3. The square root of z to the fourth, again, just like we did it before, is z squared. Okay, good. Now we have our two terms, so we have our double parentheses, and we're going to put our z squared in the first, and then we're going to add our 3's, and we're going to do plus, minus, let's FOIL it really quickly, z to the fourth, outer is negative 3z squared, inner is positive 3z squared, and last is negative 9. Middle terms cancel out, and we're left with z to the fourth minus 9.